This is one of the many pictures posted online by Pastor Bubba Copeland, who is also the mayor of Smith Station, dressed in ladies' clothing, and the article also includes pictures of him wearing women's underwear. Copeland reportedly posted the pictures on social media sites, Instagram and Reddit. AlabamaBaptist.org released the following statement, quote, "We have become aware of the alleged unbiblical behavior related to the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Phoenix City. We are praying for the leaders of the church family as they seek to determine the truth concerning these accusations," unquote.
Funeral arrangements have been set for the mayor of Smith Station, which is just outside of Auburn, after he died from an apparent suicide. The Lee County Sheriff says F.L. Bubba Copeland led police on a slow pursuit Friday. He then got out of the vehicle and took his own life with a handgun. Copeland, who was also a pastor, had been facing controversy after photos of him dressed in women's clothing circulated on the internet.
Folks, welcome to this very sad live stream, and that's really the only way I can put it. It's a very sad live stream. It just is. A lot of very unfortunate things have happened over the last couple of days here in Alabama. The mayor of the city of Smith Station, Alabama, killed himself. And a lot of what you're being told by those in the mainstream media, I believe, is less than honest. And I'll explain to you why here in just a bit. The main framing that you are receiving is basically that this individual was basically outed and therefore killed himself over his transgender identity. Let me just tell you something here real quick. That's not what happened here. Okay? That is not what went down. That is not what this is about. This is about an individual who was slowly having his life exposed. And because he was having his life exposed, he took the way out he chose. These are the decisions he made. This is the choice he made. And this was all his decision at that time. Did he have to do that? No. But it is worth noting that there is far more to this story than there's just some guy who likes to wear a dress and play dress up at his house. That's how the mainstream media is framing this. That's all it's about. And the bigots and the monsters at 1819 News, which, by the way, is a competing conservative news site for the one I work for, YellowhammerNews.com. But I'm going to defend them anyway. One, because Jeff Poore is a friend of mine. He is the editor over there. Two, Craig Monger did a good series of stories. And three, they're being wrongfully maligned by the lowest form of life in our society, and that is the mainstream news journalist. And in the state of Alabama, there is no other way to put this other than they are sad, pathetic, lonely losers. That's it. And you'll see as we get into some proof of this in just a bit. But it's not their fault. They have been failed by a profession that has lost credibility and that has lost all sense of scope and importance over the last couple of years. And you'll see why that is, because there's a problem in the education system that's turning out these journalists as well. Now, if you think the story about Bubba Copeland is about him wearing dresses and him wanting to play dress up in his wife's clothes, and you think that's the whole story, great. But that's not the whole story. The man is a pastor. He is the mayor of the city. He is a double public figure. Okay? So what he does matters. And in the state of Alabama, we have a history of covering our public figures pretty hardcore when they do stuff that we don't like, when they do things that are out of bounds, both morally or politically. In the last couple of years alone, we had a Secretary of State, John Merrill, who had stepped out on his wife. And there was some pretty weird stuff involved. Did it have anything to do with his job as Secretary of State? Absolutely not. It had nothing to do with his job as Secretary of State. But plug on they did, and they went over and over and over to the well talking about what his issues were. He was cheating on his wife. There was some kinky stuff involved. It was weird. I maligned him. I criticized him. I had him on and questioned him about it. He stayed there. He didn't resign. He finished out his term. And that was pretty much the end of it. But they covered the story even though it had nothing to do with his job. Nobody screamed, leave him alone. It has nothing to do with it. He's banging some other woman that's not his wife. Nobody said that. When Governor Robert Bentley a few years ago got involved in a situation with someone that he had working for him. Now that was far more reasonable to understand because there were state resources involved, but they went hard after that until he resigned. Again, I have no problem with that. That's completely fine. Both these stories are newsworthy. Both these stories were covered by the local media. Both these stories had the public interest. No problem with that. We have had individuals in the media like Kay Ivey, the current governor of the state of Alabama, who people have asked repeatedly, is she gay? 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 And they run those stories of people saying she's gay, she's gay. And it has nothing to do with her job. Yet they run those stories and those speculations. Now, sometimes they frame it under the guise of, well, this state representative says that this person's gay, or this person suggests that this person is gay. And then sometimes, like AL.com's Kyle Whitmire, who has found a new social media site to block me on because I called out his hypocrisy and his stupidity once again, I had him on CNN one time with me. And they tried to play this whole game about how good journalism was in Alabama and how they were exposing Roy Moore and how the AL.com editorial was going to take him down. And as we're sitting there and I'm listening to CNN's Brian Stelter talk about how wonderful this is, when he finally came to me, I said, hey, why don't we ask a question about why people shouldn't trust the local media in Alabama to Kyle Whitmire sitting over there. Ask him about how he put a poll on his website, AL.com, and a column he wrote asking if Roy Moore was gay. And they wanted people to vote in that poll. And Kyle Whitmire acknowledged he did that. They didn't fire him. He acknowledged that he did that, and he was trying to, I guess, expose Roy Moore for being gay. What's the accusation there, Kyle? Well, what are we exposing? No one in the media called for the dissolution, the dissolving of AL.com, which would probably benefit the state. But I was told attacking media outlets like that, calling for them to be punished or removed or whatever, is an attack on the First Amendment. But man, there are a lot of journalists, they got their claws out today. Unfortunately for them, they have been completely declawed by their former sad, pathetic, and ridiculous behavior that they have been engaging in. And now you've got individuals who are part of the schools that train these people coming out and saying things. I'm going to put up some tweets here that have been said about this whole Bubba Copeland thing, and we'll just go through the top ones because I think that's the important way to look at this. But if you look at this, you can see this link by Tim Lockett, a failure in all regards in his life, failed in his dream to be a journalist, washed out there. Now he teaches it, which is pretty good. He's an English teacher too, I guess. And now he's linking to an article from Tom Ehrenberg, who is a journalism professor at the University of Alabama, the school which gave you the absolute monumental geniuses like Caitlin Collins. Yeah, so good job there. You can also see some folks from the University of Alabama on cable news like Joyce Vance on MSNBC giving crackpot legal theories because she's a legal professor at the University of Alabama. So just a good job all the way around. This article by Tom Ehrenberg that you're seeing, or maybe I'm seeing because I kind of run in these circles on social media, seeing journalists and others share, talks about media ethics, which is absolutely hilarious to see. And they talk about media ethics in this, and they have a conversation where they suggest that maybe this story should have never been covered. Because it's just about some guy wearing a dress. But remember I told you it's not just about a guy wearing a dress. There's a lot more to it than that. And Tom Ehrenberg has never mentioned that. And Tim Lockett has never mentioned that. But there's also some other reporting that 1819 has done, and I'm sure these guys know it. They just don't care because it doesn't fit their narrative. And that reporting shows, and it clearly shows it, by the way, that reporting shows that if you really, really, really care about this, maybe you should pay attention for a second. Maybe you should pay attention to something that's going on here. Pay attention and listen. The man who killed himself, Bubba Copeland, was not only dressing as a woman. He was also writing fan fiction. I call it fan fiction, maybe it's not the right word. Erotic fiction is the right word. He was writing erotic fiction about a realtor in the community where he was mayor. And in that fiction, he talked about killing that person, having sex with that person's husband, stealing that person's business. That's not okay for a mayor or a pastor to do. And it is completely fair game when it comes to journalism. But there's more. This mayor, this pastor, had also went onto Reddit and posted pictures. And this is covered in 1819's reporting, which is why I'm so shocked that the geniuses in our media are not covering it. But they went onto Reddit and found these posts that the mayor of Smith Station and a pastor had wrote, where he took pictures of a minor child, boy, and his sister, who is obviously not a minor anymore, put them on the same image, and next to it, they had pictures of a needle and some implants. And it said something along the lines of, take the shots, get the implants, become the whore. So the implication there was that this young man, this young child, this minor, had transitioned into this woman. And the woman is overage. She's sitting there not scantily clad, but she is suggestively clothed, I guess would be a good way to say it. And the implication is that the minor had transitioned into the whore. My pastor doesn't talk like that. I'm just throwing that out there. My pastor doesn't post things on social media like that. There are, of course, other things out there as well, where he's talking to people about transitioning and telling people to take HRTs and saying all these other things. I had someone say to me, well, Dale, you're suggesting that they're transgender. Maybe they're just a cross-dresser. I don't know what the difference of that is. I do know what the difference is. What I'm saying is I don't know what difference that makes in any of this. He called himself a curvy, transitioning transgender girl. So transgender would be the way it is. But these other two things I mentioned here, the erotica, where he talks about killing a real estate agent in his town, and all this information is out there already. You're not seeing it in any of the stories about his life, because then it makes people go, well, what the hell is this? What the hell is this? So you're not seeing a lot of that, obviously. Instead, what you're getting is a little bit of a half story here. You're getting a half story. And why? Well, let's go back to what we're looking at here and look how they're framing this thing. We continue. Let's look. I told you about Tim Lockett. He is what he is. He is a former journalist, now a failed journalist. So if you can't do, you teach. So that's what he's doing there, promoting another individual who is, I think, telling a half story here under the framing of media ethics, but he leaves out half the story, the part that makes it a compelling story. I mean, let's just be real about it. A pastor and a mayor going online and leading a separate secret life where he's transgender, that's a news story, guys. Okay? And if it would have been Congressman Mo Brooks, who I asked about this on Thursday, or any other politician in the state of Alabama that they did not like, there's obviously some affinity here from some in the media with this mayor. And I'm guessing it's one, because he's transgender and they're all weirdos. And two, it's because he was progressive. Great. That's fantastic. But that's the affinity. It's not about journalistic ethics, that we are not covering this case because of our journalistic ethics. That is not what this is. Okay, so don't try to frame it that way. It's because they're friendly with him. That's it. So you look here at Jeremy Gray. Jeremy Gray is another decision maker over there at AL.com. They're telling the story of Bubba Copeland's life. In that story, they do this whole he didn't deserve to die this way, that sort of stuff. One person posted, Bubba Copeland was a childhood friend. He didn't deserve the public shaming he received. None of us are perfect. His life didn't have to end this way. No, his life did not have to end this way. He, however, did deserve the public shaming that he was getting. I mean, he did. I told you why. The slasher erotica, where he uses a real business, a real estate agent, talks about killing her, assuming her life, and then banging the husband. And he talked about engaging in sexual intercourse. He talked about that on Reddit and elsewhere in messages to people. And there are allegations out there still about this. They're not going to be pursued now. I think that's a huge mistake. And I've told people this. I said, people should pursue these stories. They should come forward and say what this man was really up to. They should absolutely do that. Because a lot of people are being maligned right now over this. And they've done nothing wrong. 1819 News did nothing wrong here. Nothing. But here we are, imply, oh, he didn't deserve this. No one's suggesting he deserved any of this. But it's his fault. It's no one else's fault. That's my problem with all of this. You see Doug Jones, the former United States Senator here, tweeting about this. Saddened by the death of his good friend, Mayor Bubba Copeland. He was a good man and a great mayor. Well, all of that may be true. I don't know. Saw the town through a lot of tough times. Absolutely. But the other information is out there, and nobody's talking about it. You start to go back and you look at some of the other media outlets that have covered this. It's all the same thing. He killed himself because he was outed by a far-right outlet as a transgender woman. I'm surprised they don't call her herself. That's not what it's about. He killed himself because he was being exposed. It's unfortunate. It's sad. It didn't have to happen. But there was more to this story. It sucks. But you don't get to malign others because of a decision this man made. And that's what's happened here. And it's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. You go on and you hear more people talk. This guy is a reporter for WRBL in Alabama. And he talks about Tom Ehrenberg, who I mentioned before, the journalism professor, and Bubba Copeland, they're friends. Maybe all these people being so friendly with Bubba Copeland in the media, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe that's part of this. I have great professional respect for him. I read his words, and they are thoughtful and thought-provoking. Right? Okay. What about the slasher erotica? And what about the memes involving minor children in a city? That made it newsworthy. The whole framing here is that this isn't newsworthy. And I'm telling you, this is newsworthy. I'm sorry the man killed himself. That is very unfortunate. But you should not be able to malign. And by the way, people have issued legitimate death threats for once towards people about this. Tim Lockett is back. He says that 1819 News specializes in plucking people out of obscurity, public health officials, librarians, teachers, and trying to place them at the center of a scandal. Push back. What does that mean, Tim? What does that mean to push back? And, I'm sorry, out of obscurity? You mean the mayor, the guy you got a photo of right there talking with Donald Trump. The guy who had his public comments he made online exposed. That guy. And again, I just want to make sure we understand who we're defending here, Tim. A guy who wrote erotica about killing a real estate agent in his town using that person's real name and business name, assuming their business, assuming their identity, and banging their husband. That's not worthy of coverage? And you go through and you read these comments, some by clowns, who cares? But you see Jeremy Gray, you see me there popping up right there. And I mean this. It's sad to see all the Alabama politics journalists ignoring key aspects of the Bubba Copeland story in order to demonize that they don't respect. And then I lay out all the stuff that they actually did, and they're a little afraid to get into all of that. That's for sure. The New York Post: Alabama preacher kills himself after being outed as a transgender curvy girl. Jeremy Gray, again, this is the part that kind of bothers me about some of the people that work in the local media here in the state. What bothers me about this is they frame this as the man is being attacked. So when they cover people who aren't well known, those people are attacked. If they cover people, those people are attacked. So AL.com attacks people every single day. So every time they write something, it's an attack. Okay. Let me ask something. If I was a curvy transgender girl online, and they covered me and they said that, would it be an attack? Because they would cover that. I mean, there's no question about that. That's what they would do. And I get the killing of himself. That gives everyone a way to go back, look and say, well, they shouldn't have done this. And 1819 News mentioned in one of their articles that, Copeland had desperately said to them, please don't do this. Don't tell the story. Don't tell the story. Please don't. It has nothing to do with this. And people who are saying, well, they shouldn't have ran the story, I really have to ask the question, and I wish I could speak to these people, but they're cowards. I mean, just keep that in mind. They are cowards, and if they want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to talk to any of them. But it's worth pointing out that just the mere threat of killing oneself does not end the newsworthiness of the story. Okay, and you can't do that. You can't just say, well, if they threaten to kill themselves, we're just not going to cover the story. What happens if Donald Trump does that? What happens if Donald Trump goes out and says, hey, I'll kill myself if you cover this story? What happens in that situation? Do they stop covering that story? I highly doubt that they do. Here's one of the original stories. This is how 1819 News framed it. The secret lives of Smith Station Baptist pastor FL Bubba Copeland as a transgender curvy girl. It's a hobby I do to relieve stress. I don't think there's anything wrong with that story. And look at this. This is kind of funny. Alabama Mayor and Pastor Bubba Copeland commits suicide just days after a conservative news outlet with close ties to Steve Bannon and Breitbart published private photos of him wearing women's clothing. I'm going to tell you this right now. There's more to this story. There is more to this story. And I cannot stress that to you enough. It may never be covered, but I'm telling you, there is more to this story than you're being told right now. And all these people who are coming to the defense, I don't know if he needs defending, but are, at this point, who are, and this article at least uses a picture that I was referencing earlier. You can look down here and see in between the two photos of Bubba Copeland, you can see that become the whore meme I was talking about before. But trans activists are mourning the suicide of an Alabama politician who said he was involuntarily outed as a trans woman. And they mentioned and written in Ron Famous about killing a local woman and assuming her identity. I mean, guys, look, whatever Redux Mag is doing a better job than AL.com. And this is updating in real time, by the way, because I just saw this very stream's link in there as well. So I'm sorry. This all is a really, really terrible, awful story. But looking at this and trying to find a way to blame 1819 News for it, no. Reverend Peter Laws, apparently, says it is heartbreaking and horrible that a conservative blog, 1819 News, outed Alabama mayor and pastor Bubba Copeland last week for wearing women's clothes to relieve stress. He asked them not to. They did and shared his Insta and Reddit details too. He was hounded and now he shot himself dead. Now, guys, again, I have to ask this question. If somebody asks you not to cover their story, are you not to cover it? Ask yourself that question. If you're a journalist, I mean, is that how this is supposed to work? And the answer to that is no. The answer to that is obviously no, and everybody knows that. Let's get a few more of these in here. Let's see. Dr. Kevin Young, this pastor committed suicide not too far from here today. We must end LGBTQ persecution. Again, nobody was persecuting this guy. They just exposed what he was up to and told the story. One outlet told the story that he was doing some shady stuff. Yes, some questionable stuff. Yes, some stuff that was, in fact, newsworthy. So as you read these stories and you go and you look at this, you're going to hear a lot about how 1819 News did this. That's just not true. Laura Burkhart from St. Louis has decided that they also want to weigh in on this. And by the way, she's known as the Mayor Cyber Henchman. I don't know what that means. She's part of Moms Demand Action or something. Anyway, she says a right-wing news website published photos of Bubba Copeland, the mayor of an Alabama town and a pastor of a local church wearing women's clothes and makeup. This afternoon, he addresses the congregation. 2 days later, he died by firearm suicide. Moms Demand Action. Oh, wow, so they made that about a gun thing. Oh, good. Good. And then we have people online talking about it. Don't know what they're saying. Not going to waste time looking at that. This is interesting. Human Abba al-Salam says, this is why pride is important. Bubba Copeland should not have had to hide. He should have been allowed to be himself, open and proud. Had that been the case, he could have been alive today. The mouth breathers are screaming Gaza kills queers while ignoring America, or Alabama. Nobody said to kill this guy. No one said anything about it. They merely said, hey, let's talk about this in a serious and honest way instead of the way we're talking about right now. Let's talk about all the things he did. This guy is not like some LGBTQ hero, okay? Let me be the first person to tell you that. He is not an LGBTQ hero. And lastly, one more thing, and I will just share this from my own words here, okay? I want to make sure on my own words, I will use my own statements, and I will make this as clear as I can. It is incredibly sad, and you can see I've already written this up here, but I just wanted to put it up here on the screen for you to see it. It is incredibly sad to see AL Politics journalists ignoring key aspects of the Bubba Copeland story in order to demonize an outlet that they don't respect. What about the mayor of a city writing slasher erotica about killing and assuming the life of real people, stealing their business and sleeping with their husbands? Not newsworthy? I think it is. What about a pastor using photos, misspelled a word there, sorry, of minors and other members of the community telling people to become the whore in memes about transitioning? Not newsworthy? Well, I think they clearly are. They cannot address this. They will not address this. They never try to address these things, and it is because of that they have absolutely no credibility. So my suggestion to all of you is to read more about this story, find out what's actually happened here. Don't buy into what the mainstream media is telling you because they're only telling you half the story. Just keep that in mind. They are only telling you half the story. Okay? The rest of the story is he was writing slasher erotica about killing people and taking over their businesses and sleeping with their husbands. Okay. He also had used minors and people who were not involved in memes online about getting injections, getting implants, and becoming a whore. So this whole thing about, it's just about him being transgender. It wasn't. To him, it wasn't. That much is very clear. Have I spent more time on this than I possibly should? Maybe. But you got to remember, there's a lot of people out there doing things they're not supposed to do. And if the American media is going to make the argument that, well, if this person's going to harm themselves if I cover this story, I guess I can't cover it, we're going to have a very, 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 very small number of actual stories coming out because it's pretty unfair to say that if someone's going to ice themselves, that you can't cover the story. So if anyone has anything negative to say about me, I guess I'll just say I'll kill myself, and that will be fine. That is not how any of this is ever going to work. And these journalists, they know this. And they're just being frauds. Don't let them get away with that. Don't let them get away with it. And by the way, here's a little prediction for you. Eventually, all these stories are going to come to light, and these people are going to look pretty foolish. Will they ever backtrack and tell the truth of the story? Probably not. They'll just let it die.